My name doesn't really matter, but at the time, I was 24 years old and living in Ohio. I worked a normal warehouse job and still lived close to my family. That Christmas week was supposed to be quiet. Nothing special. Just a few days off work, cold weather, and snow that wouldn't stop falling. On Christmas Eve, I volunteered to stay at my uncle's house while he and his wife drove out of state to visit their kids. It was a normal favor. I had stayed there before many times. The house was old, but familiar. 2 floors, a basement, and a long gravel driveway that disappeared into trees. It sat far enough from the road that you couldn't see it unless you were looking for it. That night felt normal at first. I parked my car, carried my bag inside, and locked the door behind me. The house was cold, so I turned on the heat and made something to eat. Outside, the wind pushed snow against the windows. Inside, everything felt still and quiet. The kind of quiet you expect on Christmas Eve in the middle of nowhere. I remember checking my phone and seeing a message from my uncle reminding me to keep the doors locked because the back door sometimes didn't latch right. I checked it, locked it, and didn't think about it again. I had no reason to. I'd grown up in that area. Nothing ever happened there. Around 8 p.m., I sat on the couch with the TV on low volume. Christmas lights from the tree reflected softly on the walls. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I was just waiting for the night to pass. Then I noticed something small that didn't make sense. The snow outside had stopped, but I heard movement near the side of the house. At first, I assumed it was the wind shifting branches. But when I looked out the window, I saw fresh footprints near the driveway. They weren't there when I arrived. I told myself maybe my uncle had stepped outside before leaving. I tried to ignore it and sat back down. A few minutes later, I heard a sound from inside the house. Not loud, not sudden, just a slow, careful noise, like someone adjusting their weight on a wooden floor. It came from the direction of the basement stairs. I stayed still and listened. The sound happened again. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Not because of fear, but because the sound was too controlled, too deliberate. And because, deep down, I knew I wasn't supposed to be hearing anyone else in that house at all. The house was located outside a small town in southern Ohio, surrounded by woods and farmland. It wasn't abandoned or run down, just old and quiet. My uncle had built it himself years ago, back when the area was more active. Over time, most of the nearby properties were sold off or left empty. By winter, especially around Christmas, the place felt completely cut off from everything else. It was the night of December 24th. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and snow covered the ground in thick layers. The sky was dark by late afternoon, and by evening there was no light outside except for the moon reflecting off the snow. Inside, the house felt safe and familiar. The heater hummed softly, and the old wooden floors creaked whenever I moved. Those sounds were normal. I had heard them my whole life. I was there for a simple reason. My uncle and aunt had driven out of state to spend Christmas with their kids and asked me to watch the house. I agreed because it was easy money and close to my parents' place. They trusted me, and I trusted the house. I knew which doors stuck, which lights flickered, and which windows rattled in the wind. There weren't many people involved. Just me and my uncle, who had left earlier that afternoon. He called me before leaving town to remind me about the back door and the basement lock. The basement had an outside entrance that he didn't use often. He told me to keep it locked, just in case. I checked it before he left, and again after I arrived. It was locked both times. I didn't plan to go anywhere that night. The roads were already icy, and more snow was expected. I texted my family to let them know I had arrived safely, then settled in for the night. I made dinner, watched TV, and planned to sleep on the couch instead of the upstairs bedroom. The couch was more comfortable, and I liked being near the front door. Nothing felt wrong at that point. The house felt the same as it always had. Quiet.
Warm. Still.
Christmas decorations were up, and a small tree stood in the corner of the living room with soft white lights. The atmosphere was calm and ordinary. That's why I didn't question anything at first.
I had no reason to.
I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing something I had done before. And if I'm being honest, I felt completely alone. After dinner, I turned off most of the lights and left only a lamp on in the living room. The TV played quietly in the background, more for noise than attention. Outside, the wind picked up again, pushing against the house and making the walls creak.
None of that bothered me.
Old houses always made noise, especially in winter. What caught my attention was how quiet everything else felt. Around 9 p.m., I realized I hadn't heard the heater cycle on in a while. The house felt a little colder than before. I stood up and walked toward the thermostat in the hallway. As I passed the kitchen, I noticed one of the cabinet doors was slightly open. I was sure I had closed it earlier. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, then shut it and moved on. When I reached the hallway, I heard a soft sound behind me. It was faint and slow, like fabric brushing against wood. I turned around, expecting to see the cat my uncle sometimes watched, then remembered there was no cat. The sound stopped as soon as I turned. I went back to the couch, telling myself it was nothing. Still, I kept the TV volume low. I wanted to hear the house. A few minutes passed. Then I heard a single creak from upstairs. Just one step. Then nothing. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for another sound. It came again, a little closer to the stairs this time. My heart started to beat faster, but I stayed calm. I told myself the wood was shifting from the cold. I had heard those same sounds growing up. The difference now was the timing. The creaks didn't feel random. They felt spaced out, like someone was moving slowly. I stood up and walked to the base of the stairs. The upstairs hallway was dark. The light switch was exactly where I left it, untouched. I didn't see anything, but I had the strong feeling that someone was standing just out of sight. I listened closely. I thought I heard breathing. Not loud, just steady. I couldn't tell if it was real or my own breath filling my ears. I stayed there for several seconds, then stepped back. That's when the living room lamp shut off. There was no flicker, no power outage. It just went dark. The TV stayed on. The silence felt heavier after that. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, knowing something in that house wasn't right anymore. When the lamp went out, the living room felt smaller. The only light left came from the TV screen, flashing shadows across the walls. I didn't move right away. I listened. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty anymore. I slowly reached down and turned the lamp back on. It didn't respond. I checked the plug. It was still in the outlet. I followed the cord with my hand and confirmed nothing was loose. The breaker hadn't tripped. The TV was still running. That made my stomach tighten. The lamp hadn't turned off by accident. I stood there, trying to decide what to do next, when I heard the sound again. This time it was clear. Footsteps. They were coming from upstairs, moving toward the top of the stairs. Slow and careful. Whoever it was didn't want to make noise. I backed away from the stairs and moved toward the front door. I checked the lock. It was still locked. I checked the deadbolt again, just to be sure. My hands were starting to shake. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and unlocked it, keeping it ready. That's when I heard the basement door. It made a dull sound like someone pressing against it from the other side. I turned toward the kitchen and listened. There was another sound, softer this time. A shuffle. Something dragging lightly across the floor. I felt trapped. The stairs were blocked by whoever was upstairs. The basement was no longer secure. The only exits were the front and back doors, and both required crossing open areas of the house. The footsteps upstairs stopped. A few seconds passed. Then I heard breathing again. It was closer now, coming from the hallway. I stayed still, barely breathing myself. The air felt thick. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. A shadow appeared on the wall near the hallway entrance.
Tall. Thin.
It moved slowly, stretching across the paint as the person stepped forward. I didn't see his face, but I knew he was watching me. The TV screen changed scenes, briefly lighting the room brighter. For a moment I saw him standing there. A man. Dark jacket. Hood pulled low. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. He just stood there, like he knew I had nowhere to go. That was when I realized this wasn't someone breaking in. He was already inside. The moment I saw him clearly, my body reacted before my mind did. I turned and ran toward the kitchen. I didn't look back. I heard his footsteps hit the floor behind me, faster now, no longer careful. I grabbed the back door handle and pulled. It didn't open. The door shook as I tried again. My uncle's warning came back to me too late. The latch had frozen. I felt panic rise in my chest as I heard him closing the distance. I ran past the kitchen and into the hallway leading to the laundry room. I slammed the door behind me and turned the lock just as something hit the other side. The door bent inward slightly, but it held. I pressed my weight against it, trying to stay quiet.
My phone was still in my hand.
I dialed 911 without looking at the screen. My fingers slipped as I tried to keep my voice low. I told the dispatcher someone was in the house. I gave the address. I didn't explain anything else. I didn't have time. The man stopped hitting the door. I heard him breathing on the other side.
Slow.
Controlled. Like he was listening to me. Then his hand tried the knob. He twisted it once.
Twice.
When it didn't open, he stepped back. I thought he had left. Then I heard something metal scrape against the doorframe. I backed away and crouched behind the washer, holding the phone against my chest. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. She told me to stay quiet. I could hear the man moving again, his steps circling the room. The scraping sound came back, harder this time. The door shook. Paint chipped off near the lock. I knew it wouldn't hold forever. I looked around the room for anything I could use, but there was nothing. Suddenly, the sound stopped. Seconds passed. Then, a minute. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just waited. Finally, I heard the back door open. Cold air rushed through the house. Footsteps moved away into the snow. A few minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the small window. I stayed hidden until I heard police shouting my name. Only then did I stand up, knowing I had barely made it out. After the police arrived, they didn't let me leave the laundry room right away. 2 officers cleared the house while another stayed with me. I could hear them moving through each room, calling out to each other, checking closets, opening doors. Every sound made my chest tighten again. When they finally told me it was safe, I walked out slowly. The house looked the same as it always had, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. The back door was open, snow blown in across the kitchen floor. Fresh footprints led from the door toward the tree line behind the house. The officers followed the tracks, but lost them in the woods. It had started snowing again, covering everything too quickly. One of them stayed behind to talk to me while the others searched the property. That's when they took me to the basement. I had been down there countless times growing up, but I had never seen it like that. Behind the shelves near the far wall, they found a small hidden space. Someone had cleared it out and made it livable. There was a sleeping bag, empty food cans, bottled water, and a portable heater plugged into an extension cord. The officer told me it looked like someone had been living there for weeks. Then they found the knife. It was a large hunting knife wrapped in cloth, tucked between the wall and the concrete floor. The blade was clean. Recently cleaned. That detail stuck with me more than anything else. As they kept searching, another officer called out from near the stairs. He had found something else. The basement door that led outside had been unlocked from the inside. The lock wasn't broken. It had been opened on purpose. That meant the man didn't break in that night. He had been inside the house before I arrived. The officers believed he waited until Christmas Eve because he assumed the house would be empty. When he realized I was there, he didn't leave. He stayed quiet. He watched. He waited for the right moment. They never found him. Before they left, one officer told me something that still bothers me. He said the man knew the house well. Too well. The hidden space wasn't new. It had been used before. Which meant this wasn't the first time someone had stayed there unnoticed. I didn't stay in that house again after that night. I packed a bag while the police were still there and left before dawn. My uncle offered to come back early, but I told him not to rush.
I didn't want to talk about it yet.
I didn't want to explain what it felt like knowing someone had been living beneath me, listening, watching, waiting. The police followed up a few times over the next weeks. They asked questions. They showed me photos. None of them were him. The footprints were gone. The knife was logged into evidence. The hidden space in the basement was boarded up. The case slowly went quiet. No one was ever arrested. Life moved on, at least on the surface. I went back to work. I spent Christmas with my family the following year. I stopped house-sitting altogether. On paper, nothing else happened. But something stayed with me. I still think about how calm he was. He didn't panic. He didn't rush. He moved like someone who had done this before. Like someone who knew exactly how long he could stay hidden. I think about the way he turned the door handle, slow and controlled, as if he was testing my patience instead of the lock. What bothers me most is the basement. The officers told me the hidden space showed signs of long-term use. That means he had watched other people before me. Families.
Kids.
People who never knew he was there. People who slept upstairs while he lay awake below them. Sometimes I wonder if he ever left the area at all. The house is still standing. My uncle sold it a year later, and another family moved in. They put up new lights, fixed the doors, and cleared out the basement. From the outside, it looks safe. Normal. Just another quiet house in the snow. But every Christmas, when the nights get long and the houses go quiet, I think about that man. And I can't stop wondering if somewhere someone else is locking their door, feeling completely alone. And is wrong about that too.